Autumn is the time for baking, and I wanted to show you today how to make bread from scratch without using a bread making machine. You don't need a lot to get started. You need a large mixing bowl. You need a basket for your bread to proof in. You need olive oil, flour, fast-acting yeast, salt, and a little extra flour for kneading. I like to use a glass pan, and you want to coat that with olive oil, and then you also want to add in a little flour so that it doesn't stick. So the first thing you're going to do is take 500 grams of flour. I'm using a seeded variety. And then you're going to add in your salt. You need a tablespoon of salt and a teaspoon of quick-acting yeast. Then you'll add your tablespoon of olive oil. And in the same measuring cup, you want to add about 250 mils of warm water. And then I always use a wooden spoon to get the mixing going. And you just want to mix it up until the dough starts to come together. Make sure that you scrape all the sides. You don't want to waste any of the dough. You don't want the dough to be too wet, but if you do have some flour that's not incorporating in, go ahead and add a tiny bit more water. Make sure the bowl is nice and clean. Of course, you want to wash your hands before you do this next step. The next thing you want to do is just dump out some flour. Don't be afraid to get flour on the table, and then dump out the dough. And I'll show you really quickly how to knead. You're going to knead the dough for 10 minutes, and it's really important that you take the 10 minutes. The dough will be a little sticky. That's okay. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. And how you knead is you pull the dough back, and then you pull it forward. You pull the dough back, and then you pull it forward. Just like this for 10 minutes. If you need to add more flour because it starts to stick to the table, go ahead and do that. Again, don't be afraid to add flour. Okay, so I've been kneading for 10 minutes. You want to make sure that it's shaped nice. Put a little bit of your flour into the bowl where you're going to be proofing. Set it in, give it a pat for good measure. You're going to take a clean dish towel, make it damp with warm water. And then you're just going to lay your damp towel over the bowl and let that proof in an area that is outside of the draft. And you're going to let this proof until it doubles. It usually takes about anywhere between 25 minutes and an hour. Just check on it. I'll be back with the next step. So now that our bread has risen, which is great, we're going to pop it out. And we are going to fold it just a few times. We don't want to rework the bread completely. And we're going to shape it into a loaf. We have our pan, spread the oil around. Make sure that you get good coverage the whole way to the top because the bread is going to go the whole way to the top and beyond. And then you're going to take some of your flour and sprinkle a bit of flour in there. What I like to do is work it the whole way around. Make sure you have good coverage. And then I go over to the sink and I dump it out and make sure that the flour goes the whole way to the top. There you go. That's all ready. Put the loaf in, pat it down, grab a knife and score it. You don't want to go the whole way through, just about half an inch down into the loaf. And then you cover it again with your towel, your damp towel, and you let it rise again for about 25 minutes. At this point in time, I typically like to preheat the oven, and you want to cook this at 180 degrees Celsius. So we've let our bread rise, and you'll see that it has filled out the pan and has grown about double in size since we last put it in. The only thing you have to do next is put it into the oven, middle shelf, middle of the rack, and you want to bake it at 180 for about 35 to 40 minutes. Important, when you take it out, don't turn the oven off just yet. I want you to flip it out of the pan and give it a tap on the bottom. And if it sounds hollow inside, that means that it's done. Then you want to keep it out of the pan and put it on a wire rack to cool for about 15 or 20 minutes before you dive in. So there you have it, your weekend project, making a fresh loaf of bread.